There were 2 plates in the dishwasher that I didn't recognize. They weren't ours. I know that sounds insane, but when you do the dishes every night for 3 years straight, you notice these things. Same pattern, same brand, same little chip on the edge of the bowl she always swore she didn't cause. But these? Smooth. Clean. Nowhere. Like they'd just come from a stranger's kitchen. So I asked, casually, calmly. She blinked fast and said, "Oh, those? I think they were a gift from my mom." Her mom's been dead for 5 years. That was Tuesday. By Thursday, I started counting spoons. There were 15. We owned 12. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. Not even when I took half a bottle of melatonin and put on the Ocean Waves playlist that used to help me fall asleep before things got, well, like this. Friday came. She left early. Said it was a client meeting downtown. She works in finance. She hates downtown. She never leaves before 9. She left at 7:12 a.m. I know because I was already sitting on the couch, fully dressed, pretending to sleep. I waited all day, didn't even open the blinds. Just sat in the quiet, counting the sound of the fridge motor and the click of the thermostat. At 8:23 p.m. Headlights. Not hers. A knock. And then, her voice from the hallway. "Don't answer the door." Whispered. Firm. Almost trembling. So I did. And that's when this whole illusion collapsed faster than I thought it ever could. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you what I saw when I opened that door, and why I haven't looked at her the same since. When I opened the door, I was fully prepared to see a delivery guy, maybe a neighbor, hell, even one of her annoying coworkers with a forgotten USB stick. But not him. Not the man in the gray beanie. He stood there like he owned the place. Confident. Polished. Not overdressed, but expensive enough for me to know his jeans cost more than my weekly grocery bill. His eyes flicked to mine like he was annoyed I answered instead of her. He didn't say hello. He didn't say anything at first. Just glanced past me into the house and said, "She said you wouldn't be home." The world paused. My ears rang. I felt my hands curl into fists before I even realized what I was doing. I didn't know who he was. Not yet. But my gut did. That traitorous, whispering gut of mine had been warning me for weeks, maybe months. I didn't say a word. I stepped aside. Not to invite him in, but to let him see the woman standing behind me in the hallway, frozen in socks and a sweatshirt she never wore around me anymore. Her face drained, like the color got sucked out with a vacuum. She didn't say his name, didn't scream, didn't cry. She just whispered, "Wait in the car." He didn't argue, didn't even glance back at her. Just gave me this smug half nod, like I was the help, and walked back toward a matte black Audi I'd never seen before. She shut the door softly behind him. That's when I noticed her hand was shaking. Just a little. Enough to let me know. She wasn't sorry. She was scared. I waited for an explanation. A lie. A breakdown. Anything. But she just stared at me, like I was a dog who peed on the rug. And then, I swear to God, she rolled her eyes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said, as if I was the one cheating. As if I had crashed her little fantasy. I still didn't speak. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Finally, she said it. "You were gone, Elliot. Even when you were here. You stopped trying." I almost laughed. I wanted to scream. I was doing your laundry at midnight and bringing you soup when you faked being sick during your period. But all I said was, "How long?" She looked away, then back, and said, "Does it matter?" That was the answer. That was everything I needed to hear. I nodded, walked past her, picked up my keys. And she had the audacity, to ask, "Where are you going?" I looked at her, and I swear I didn't even recognize her face anymore. Not the woman I married. Not the girl I proposed to in the rain. Not the person I cried in front of when my father died. Just a stranger. I opened the door, turned halfway, and said, "Nowhere. Just like us." And then I left. No bag. No plan. No idea what came next. Just one truth ringing in my ears. "No touching today," she said. Like I was a stranger. So I became one. I didn't sleep that night. I parked the car in an empty supermarket lot and just sat there, listening to the hum of the engine while my hands trembled on the steering wheel. I don't know how long I sat like that, but the sun had already started climbing by the time I finally turned the key and let the silence swallow the cabin. I didn't cry. Not really. My chest tightened a few times. You know that lump in your throat that feels like a scream you can't let out? That stayed with me the whole night. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But mostly, I just wanted answers. I drove around for a while the next day, didn't know where else to go. Ended up parked outside a gas station with a cold coffee in my hand and 2 missed calls from her. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail. Her voice sounded off, flat, not sorry, more like annoyed. Elliot, I know you're upset, but walking out like that was immature. Let's talk like adults. You can't just ignore reality. Reality? That's what she called it. Reality. I stared at the phone like it had spit on me. I was about to toss it into the back seat when I remembered something strange. That night, just before I left the house, I had grabbed my jacket from the hallway closet, the one I hadn't worn in weeks. When I got to the car, I tossed it into the glove box because it was too warm. But something had shifted when I shoved it in, something underneath it. I reached over and popped open the glove box. There it was. A second phone. Slim. Black. Face down. No case. For a second, I just stared at it like it might bite me. Then I picked it up, pressed the side button. It was unlocked. No fingerprint. No passcode. Nothing. What I found on that phone was enough to make my fingers go numb. There were texts. Hundreds. Maybe more. And not just with him, the man in the beanie. There were others. One named B. One saved as art teacher. Another just labeled person lifting weights. The conversations were flirty, intimate, careless, and older than I expected. Photos. Screenshots. One video. I didn't watch it. I couldn't. But what hit me hardest, what truly crushed me, was a note saved in her app titled Exit Plan. It was dated 11 months ago. I opened it. Step 1. Detach emotionally. Step 2. Start building new support system. Step 3. Make him feel guilty for distance. Step 4. Wait for him to leave first. There were more bullet points. Cold. Calculated. She even had a backup plan in case I didn't leave. She was going to bring up therapy, drag it out, and eventually make me look like the emotionally unavailable one, so that she could play the victim to friends, family, maybe even a divorce lawyer. I put the phone down and just stared out the windshield. That's when something in me cracked. Not like a snap. More like ice breaking underfoot, slow and splintering. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And when you're done, really done, you don't yell. You don't plead. You don't even cry. You get quiet. And in that quiet, you start planning things she'll never see coming. I didn't go back home that weekend. I stayed in a cheap motel about 40 minutes outside town, the kind of place where they hand you an actual key instead of a card, and the TV only plays static on half the channels. It smelled like mold and old cigarettes, but it was quiet, and no one knew me there. That was enough. For 72 hours, I didn't shower. Barely ate. Just sat on the bed with that second phone on the nightstand like it was a loaded weapon. I scrolled through every message, every saved draft, every contact. I read her replies more than once. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to understand how far gone she was. And it wasn't just cheating. It wasn't even lust. It was strategy. She was engineering a new life, and I was never supposed to see the blueprint. But she made a mistake. When I left the house that night, I took my laptop with me. It wasn't for work or anything useful, just habit. I'd logged into my email on her device a few weeks back when mine was updating, and I guess she never noticed. When I powered it up in the motel, something popped up immediately. A notification from her calendar. Session with G at 9:30. Hotel, don't forget wine. G. I opened the browser. She hadn't cleared her tabs. That's when I realized she'd never logged out of her own accounts. Not Gmail. Not Google Docs. Not even her synced notes. All of it just sitting there. Open. Waiting. Exposed. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. But of course I did. There was a document titled Marriage Narrative. It was a work in progress. She was writing something. For who? I didn't know yet. Maybe a therapist? Or a lawyer? Or even just herself. The first paragraph? It hit like a punch to the ribs. For years, I carried the emotional burden alone. Elliot meant well, but he was passive. Disconnected. I felt more like a roommate than a wife. I stared at that line for a long time. Not because it hurt. It did. But because I realized she was writing my obituary while I was still alive. And no one would question it. Her friends loved her. My family didn't even talk to me anymore. She'd spent a year planting the seeds. All she had to do now was water the story and let it grow. I was the boring husband. The cold one. The man who never listened. She was building a case. A version of events where she got to be the one who left. Gracefully. justifiably. But now I had the evidence. The blueprint. Her version of the truth before it was even published. So I copied everything. Downloaded the full Google Drive. Every doc, every image, every message she'd backed up. It was all there. I zipped it into a folder and renamed it. For when she lies. And then, for the first time since this all started, I got up, took a long shower in that awful motel bathroom, shaved my face, put on a clean shirt, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, pale, hollow, but my eyes? They were awake. And she had no idea. I came back on a Tuesday evening. No warning. No dramatic text. No, we need to talk. Just walked through the door like I was returning from work, set my keys on the table, and took off my jacket. She looked up from the couch like I'd risen from the dead. Mouth half open, remote in hand, hair up in that messy twist she used to only do on Sundays. She didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. I went straight to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sipped it slow. My hands didn't shake this time. I wasn't here to scream or cry or demand the truth. That part of me had dried up somewhere between motel pillows and Google Docs. When I finally sat across from her, she put the remote down like she thought we were about to have a heart-to-heart. And that's exactly what she wanted, a clean emotional exit. The kind where she gets to say, "We've just grown apart." And I sit there quietly while she explains her new journey and her need to find herself. She wanted closure. Controlled, composed, gentle. But I wasn't there to give her closure. I was there to make her uncomfortable. "You left your second phone in my car," I said. Flat. Cold. Her eyes twitched. Not her body, her eyes. Like a quick little spasm. That was the first crack. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, too fast, too high-pitched. I tilted my head, watching her squirm. She blinked 3 times in 2 seconds. Crossed her legs. "Uncrossed them. I know everything," I said. "Don't insult me with a lie you haven't even rehearsed properly." She froze. Her mouth parted slightly, then closed again like she was chewing on a defense. She wasn't ready for this. She hadn't expected me to come home with data, receipts, patterns, GPS pings, calendar events, emails, the works. "Okay," she said finally, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. "Then let's talk like adults." That phrase again. Like adults. I almost smiled. She was trying to guide the narrative back into her hands. But it was too late for that. "There won't be a discussion," I said calmly. "Not yet. I'm just letting you know that I'm aware. And I'm watching." That shook her more than I expected. She wasn't scared of yelling. She was prepared for that. She was scared of quiet. Of not knowing what I'd seen, what I'd copied, what I might do next. She needed control. I took that away. She tried to regain footing. "Look, Elliot, we're obviously not happy. I've been trying to make this work for months." "You wrote your exit plan 11 months ago," I interrupted. Her face went pale. "You were never trying to fix this," I continued. "You were trying to bury it with enough emotional theater to make everyone believe you were the victim." She stood up, pacing now, eyes darting. "You broke into my private. It was unlocked. Silence. The kind of silence where you can hear the blood in your ears. The kind that makes the walls feel like they're leaning in." I stood up slowly. Not to intimidate her. I wasn't going to raise a hand. I just wanted her to see it. The stillness. The restraint. "I'm not leaving tonight," I said. "I'm not storming out. I'm not sleeping in my car. I'm sleeping in the guest room. And you're going to live with what you did, in the same house as the man you dismantled piece by piece." Her lip trembled. She didn't say anything. Didn't apologize. Just stood there like a ghost, watching me walk down the hallway and shut the door behind me. The guest room was cold, bare, but it was mine now. And as I lay on that lumpy mattress staring at the ceiling, one thought played on loop in my head. She thought I came home to talk. She has no idea what I actually came home to do. It's strange how quickly silence becomes a weapon. At first, it's just tension in the room. Heavy, awkward, avoidable. But then it starts to infect everything. The footsteps in the hallway. The sound of drawers opening. Even the way you chew your food feels louder, like it means something. And that's where we were now. She avoided me. We lived in the same house, used the same kitchen, breathed the same air, but she moved like I wasn't there. Brushed past me like I was a shadow on the wall. No more fake smiles. No more, "Hey," when she came home. Just radio silence. Except she wasn't quiet at night. She whispered. On the phone. In the bathroom. Or in the walk-in closet where she thought I couldn't hear. But I did. I always did. She slept soundly for someone with that much to hide. Her phone would buzz twice around 11:30 every night. Like clockwork, I started paying attention to the pattern. 2 buzzes, then silence, then a third, longer vibration, like a voice memo, maybe, then another minute of silence, then laughter. God, the laughter. Not loud, just soft little chuckles, but real. I hadn't heard her laugh like that in years. Certainly not around me. I used to think she'd forgotten how. One night, curiosity won. I left the guest room door slightly open and stood quietly near the hallway while she giggled in the kitchen with the fridge light still on. The sound of her voice was playful. Young. She was telling someone a story, something about a coworker messing up a spreadsheet, the kind of mundane nonsense you only share when you feel close to someone. And then I heard it. Don't worry, he's not even awake. He sleeps like a rock. Barely even notices I'm here. The sentence hit me harder than the cheating ever did. Because she wasn't talking about me like a partner. She was talking about me like furniture. Like I was just there, occupying space. Something to move around when it got in the way. That night, I didn't sleep. Not a second. My eyes stayed glued to the ceiling as the words repeated over and over. He barely even notices I'm here. What she didn't know, couldn't have known, was that I'd already installed 2 tiny audio recorders. One in the hallway near the vent. The other beneath the couch cushion she always used when on her late-night calls. I'd done it days earlier. Not to catch her in some explosive betrayal, but to hear the parts she didn't say out loud. The in-between moments. The stuff you only reveal when you think no one's listening. By the end of the week, I had over 14 hours of recordings. Some were nothing. Just her scrolling TikTok or eating cereal at midnight. But some were gold. One conversation stood out. Thursday night, 1:14 a.m. He still doesn't suspect a thing. And honestly, I think he's too ashamed to confront me. That's the beauty of quiet men. They internalize everything. I sat there listening to her describe me like a case study, like a creature she'd trapped and was now dissecting. The worst part? She was right. I had internalized everything. For years. But not anymore. I started writing again. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for clarity. I needed my own narrative, my version of the truth. Every lie she told, every whisper I captured, every night she left without an excuse. I documented all of it. Dates. Times. Names. It was no longer about saving the marriage. That ship sank somewhere between her third affair and the night she whispered about me like I was some clueless prop. Now it was about timing. And when the right moment came, she'd learned just how dangerous a quiet man becomes when he stops pretending he's asleep. Saturday morning came dressed like any other. Birds chirping, coffee brewing, the kind of sunshine that pretends the world is fair. She walked into the kitchen in one of my old t-shirts, pretending like we were still normal. It was always the small cruelties with her. The illusion. The familiarity she borrowed when it suited her. She poured herself a mug of coffee, same one I always used, the chipped green one I bought at a thrift store before we were married. She took the last of the cream without asking, scrolled her phone, and asked, flatly, if I had any plans for the day. No. I replied, staring directly at her. I thought I'd stay in, be around, catch up on everything. Her eyes lifted just barely. A flicker, like a deer hearing a distant twig snap. But she didn't say anything, just nodded and went back to her screen. She hated when I was around. I was an interruption now. Not in the way a fight interrupts a peaceful night. More like a glitch in a carefully rehearsed performance. She couldn't pace the kitchen making her quiet phone calls, or leave for errands that ended at unfamiliar hotels, if I was just there, watching existing. The tension built fast that day. She started slamming drawers just a little harder. Her responses got shorter. At one point she actually hissed under her breath when I asked if she was okay. And then, around 4 p.m, it happened. She stood in the hallway outside the guest room. Arms crossed. One hip popped to the side like she was about to give a TED talk on emotional manipulation, and said, "You're being cruel, Elliot. You're not talking, you're not engaging. You're just haunting the house like some bitter ghost." I stayed seated on the edge of the bed. Calm. Collected. Cruel? I repeated, almost amused. You're sleeping with 2 different men, one of whom you labeled as art teacher in your phone, and I'm the one being cruel? She blinked, visibly recoiled. She hadn't expected me to bring it up. I'd been so silent, so methodical, she thought maybe I was bluffing. Maybe I hadn't seen everything. Her hands started to fidget, thumb rubbing against palm, eyes darting around the room like she was calculating exits. She tried a defense. You went through my private things. That's a violation. So is cheating, I said. Repeatedly. And systematically. For months. Maybe longer. Don't throw the word violation at me like you even remember what it means. She started crying. On command. It was always on command with her. Like a faucet she could twist on when she felt the narrative slipping. But here's the thing about someone like her. The crying wasn't for remorse. It was a tactic. A weapon. She wasn't sorry. She was losing. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she whispered. I was lonely. You've been distant for a long time. You disappeared inside yourself. No, I said softly. I disappeared because of you. Not before you. You slowly chipped away at me until there was nothing left to give. Then you blamed me for being hollow. She didn't respond. Just stood there shaking slightly, tears making tracks down her cheeks like she hoped they'd distract me from the truth sitting between us like a landmine. I stood and walked toward her. Slowly. She didn't move. I haven't raised my voice once, I said. I haven't screamed. I haven't thrown anything. But somehow, I'm still the villain in your story. Because I stopped begging for your affection. Because I learned how to disappear, the way you always hoped I would. She looked up at me, eyes red, lower lip trembling. I just want to fix this, she whispered. I stared at her. The silence held for a long moment. No, I finally said. You don't want to fix this. You want to control the ending. And that's when it happened. Her face, that practiced mask of regret, cracked. Just a little. Just enough for me to see it. She wasn't heartbroken. She was terrified. Not of me. Of what I might do next. She'd never had to face consequences before. She'd always written the story, framed the narrative, steered the ship. But now I had the map, the compass, and the wind. I'm not going to scream, I said. I'm not going to kick you out. But I'm also not going to protect your image when this all comes to light. Not to your friends. Not to your family. Not to anyone. She took a step back. No more tears. Just breathing heavy. As if she was realizing something for the first time. That's when I knew I'd already won. Not because I broke her, but because I stopped letting her break me. 3 weeks. That's how long I stayed in the house after the confrontation. 3 weeks of silence, tension, and fake civility. She didn't apologize again. She didn't explain. She just floated around the house like a ghost, waiting for the next storm that never came. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was rebuilding. Quietly. I'd reconnected with my brother after 2 years of not speaking. I didn't tell him everything. Just enough for him to understand that I needed help moving a few boxes. He offered his guest room, said I could stay as long as I needed. No questions asked. At night, I kept writing. But now the pages weren't about her. They were about me. About the parts of myself I'd buried to make space for someone who never intended to meet me halfway. I wrote about the first time I made her laugh. About the quiet way she stopped kissing me on the cheek when I brought her coffee. About the slow erosion of us that happened while I kept pretending we were still solid. And then I wrote something else. Something final. You don't heal by winning. You heal by leaving. The next morning, I woke up early. Made a full pot of coffee. Left the last cup for her on the kitchen counter with a note that said simply, "There's nothing more to say. Don't call." I packed only what was mine. Left the rest. I didn't want reminders. I didn't want souvenirs of pain. Just my books, my clothes, my notebooks, and peace. When I stepped outside, the air felt different. Cleaner. Brighter. I know that sounds dramatic, but it did. It really did. Like the oxygen itself knew I was finally breathing again. I didn't slam the door. I didn't throw a final insult or set the house on fire with a truth bomb. I just left. And in that quiet exit, I reclaimed every piece of myself she'd tried to erase. It's been 6 months now. I live in a smaller place. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I sleep better. I laugh more. I write more. I even started volunteering at a community writing program on Sundays. Kids who have stories, but no voice. I get that now. As for her, she tried texting. Once. A simple, "Hope you're okay." I blocked the number. Because I am okay. Better than okay. Some stories don't need revenge. Some betrayals don't need punishment. Sometimes, the best closure is knowing you were never the problem. And walking away without burning the house down. That's power. That's peace. That's freedom.